And when Kaisa proposed me to come and to explain what is happening now in Chile and Argentina, for me was a great opportunity. Because I travel a lot and I always get the idea that people in the world don't have the correct information. That get me, you know, every time that I'm discussing with reporters in the States, for example, they said, yeah, but Chile, Argentina, blah, 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 blah. And then I asked, what do you know about Chile, Argentina? Can you tell me some wines to understand that? And then the classicals start to talk me about very non-interesting wines. So I said to them, hey, first go to Chile, know what you're talking, and then we can talk, but you really don't know Chile, and you really don't know Argentina. So it's very easy today with the globalization to get a macro idea, and it's important to know, yeah, Chile is like that, France like that, blah, 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 and we don't have time to go deep. And I really hate that. And because wine is about details, time and knowing people and place. I will focus the main presentation in different steps. The first one, I will go through my experience on Terroir to get some basic point to discuss about what is happening in Chile and Argentina. Then I will try to explain in some minutes what is Chile. Then we'll continue with Coyle and with Luis Felipe Edwards. Then we are going to taste the wines. Then we will be back to talk about Mendoza, different kind of terroir, what is happening in Mendoza. And then we'll go to Finca Flichman and Alto Las Hormigas, and we're going to taste. So just to start, I would say that I have 13 years experience on terroir. Have been very different for me, many changes in my mind, and I was very lucky. I was formed in France by nice people and really great people who really helped me when my Chilean government wasn't able to help me. French people really helped me, and so I spent 2 years in Montpellier. Then I came back to Chile, and it was in '98. Nobody wanted to talk terroir. Nobody knew really what terroir was. And then I came back to France, to Paris, to the Economic Center for 4 years to make a PhD on terroir with very clever French guys. And was great for me because I was paid by a Chilean company called Conchitoro to study the macro and the micro terroir of a wine that is produced called Don Melchor, which is one of the most famous and oldest Cabernet Sauvignon from Chile. And I got very lucky because my grant was quite good, so I could travel many times to Burgundy and to Bordeaux and really get the idea of what terroir is here, but mostly here. And I was just discussing 2 minutes ago that when I ended my PhD, the result of my work was 0. I mean, I wasn't able to prove in numbers that a wine was better than another one. And I spent 4 years trying to find numbers to explain what different terroirs are. But if you taste the wines, it's very clear. That means that at this moment I decided that I didn't want to go to the scientific main focus to develop my work. It is more intuition. It is more trying to get what the important points are. And being very lucky because I work a lot in many places, in Chile, Argentina, Tuscany, Burgundy, and Sonoma, and Okanagan Valley in Canada, and 2 years ago I was working in Armenia. And you see what terroir is in all the different places. And always there are some points that are the same everywhere. And the same point is the key point. When I was in the PhD, I was evaluating 56 different parameters, climate, soils, and what I realized is that always is very important to get very fast 3 or 4 of the main important parameters. Then the other parameters always are important, but there are 3 or 4 that are the key point for every vineyard. The problem is that these 3 or 4 parameters will change depending on the geology of the places and the climate, the relationship between the climate and the geology. And if you don't have a smart viticulturist or a smart winemaker, the interpretation of the place can be very mistaken. which is for me the main problem of terroir. It's not the place, it's the interpretation of the place. So in that, I would say that there are some key points, and my experience showed me that climate is maybe the most important. And always journalists ask me, you are more soil working, and what do you think about climate and soil? For my wines, I went first to decide the climate, because for me and my experience, climate will give you the typicity of what you're going to produce. So if you want to really produce very rich wines, Napa Valley style, very black fruit, dark, concentrated, it's first the climate who will provide that. And if you want to go really for very vertical wines, more minerality, good acidity, again, it's the climate. So if you're going to start a project, first, the big question is, what do you want to do? And this will be, in my opinion, very related with atypicity of a product. But the problem is that in climate, there is nobody that's real genius of climate in the world. There is Jordi Tonieto from Brazil, who has a PhD in Montpellier, but we really don't know nothing about climate in terms of number. So it's again, we got the feeling of the place. So it's more intuitive. You know, the sunny days, cold, not cold, snow, not snowing, and traveling will let you get some correlations, you know, in terms of the balance of the wines. Some climate, we really don't know a lot. Morphology is super important, because morphology is about the form of the land. And you will always see people saying that, you know, you need to plant on the slopes, but they didn't told to you if the slope is convex or concave. And then if you go and you travel and you visit the wines that you have on your cellar, you will see that many of the wines come from lands that have this kind of form. And there is a reason of that. So always when I start working with somebody, I took 1 day, 2 days walking, looking of the morphology of the place. Because the morphology will be directly related with the geology, stage of the place. So if you are in a lava limestone, if the form is like that, you will find one kind of limestone. If it's like that, you will have another kind of limestone. This will have one typicity, this will have another typicity. Because this will be affect the soil. So the alteration of the limestone. And when we talk soil, we talk porosity. If we don't have porosity in the soil, we don't have air. If there is no air, there is no water. If there is no air and water, there is no roots. If there is no roots, there is nothing. So it's very simple, the porosity on the soil. And mainly the big terroirs in the world have beautiful and great porosity, because always there is some little stones, I call them pebbles, that in general people don't pay attention, but for me is key element. That just more than the sun, and these little stones made Burgundy what it is, for example, because they improve the porosity. Then the clay and the fertility, and this is a huge topic. We are starting understanding how this is possible to function. These 2 or 3 big specialists in the world. The most famous is Claude Bourguignon from Burgundy. But we know that clay is a word that means really nothing. We put everything that we don't understand in the soil into a name. We give the name clay. But there are many different kinds of clays, and the clay is the only part that gets the microelements in the soil. So it's impossible to get really a deep approach to a terroir if we don't pay attention again of the relationship between the clay and the fertility. So this is a huge topic. We are starting to understand now in the world, and it's great, and at the same time it's not so great, because easily when writers go very straight, it's very easy to get sexy topic of the clay, because there will all be people talking about Petrus and the blue clay of Petrus and the clay, blah 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 blah. So, but the same clay of Petrus you will find it in Chile and everywhere. I mean, it's not about the clay in Petrus. It's a great clay, but can be terrible also. It will depend on the climate. I was last year with the viticulturist in Petrus. I said to him, it was very warm, it was July, and I said to him, you are in a huge problem with the warming, the global warming, your vines will start to stress too much because the clay was already cracked very hard. When the clay will start to crack in pomerol out. Dry tannins immediately. So it's very fragile, especially when you cannot irrigate. It's great, but it's fragile. Then another point that is key is zoning. Zoning means okay, this soil is great, but what about this soil? And that brings you to a scale problem. What is a scale decision for a winery? Means your top cuvée can be bring from 0.2 hectares or 1 hectare, or you're going to blend on 3 hectares. What is your scale? And scale will be directly related with price, so with a commercial price. And this is one point that is very important today in Chile and Argentina, because we are not able for the moment to sell at the prices that other countries sell, so we blend a lot. And it's a huge problem because, for example, I know the pure wines for my clients, I know how great they are, and I know that the blend is beautiful. We're going to talk about some wines we're going to taste. But the components are better, but we are not Burgundy. So we can go out with 10 different wines for the same property, because it will be very hard to sell for the moment. So it's a zoning problem. And at the end, the man interpretation. The man interpretation is very, very complicated. It's more difficult, complicated of terroir, because that involves a lot of people. First, the owner. Second, the CEO. Then the viticulturist, and the winemaker, and the commercial. And in general, you need to spend a lot of time, and what I said is evangelize the people. And it took me years to understand that the first guy that should be evangelized is the winemaker. Because if the winemaker is convinced, then the winemaker will help you to evangelize the owner and the CEO. If you go through the viticulturist, you are dead. Nobody listens to the viticulturist in France, Italy, Chile, whatever. So the problem is that man interpretation is a huge topic because, for example, I was discussing some days ago, there's a wine consultant that is quite famous but not well known because he's very low profile. It's called Boissonneau. And Boissonneau has been the guy who has been making the first grow in Bordeaux for many years. And if you want to interview Boissonneau, he's very old now. You will never get any interview. He's very shy, you know. But the question, why this guy has been making those wines for 30 or 40 years as a consultant. And it's because the guy really knows and respects the terroir, so will never change what the terroir is. If you bring another consultant, it will be a problem, because maybe his interpretation will be completely different, and he will make another techniques, another picking point or whatever, and the wine will completely change. So the main interpretation is a very complicated topic here on terroir that can change everything. And it's really funny for me because sometimes places that are outstanding terroir give you horrible wines. Then with the second winemaker that makes some trials with the same terroir, you get magnificent wines. It's a problem for the first winemaker. So the main interpretation is complicated. But always, you do not have to forget that it's not about climate, not about soil, not about interpretation, it's about the wine. And that, again, is a big problem because I quite know very well all the terroir specialists in the world, and they're very good, really very good in terms of soil, but they don't know how to taste. So if you are not able to relate the soil with the wine, it's just descriptive. It's a science fiction, it's an hypothesis. So that's the old school of terroir specialists, 3-4 guys in France. And now there are 3-4 guys in France that are really good because they have the opportunity to really know this side of the wine and following the wine. And that's the key for every country, to understand that this is the geology, this is the diversity of the wine, and this wine is changing because of that or that. And that brings you that it's very important to talk about details. Details are also essential. And again, it's a scale problem. What is a detail for me, maybe it's not a detail for you. So again, climate, typicity style, it's always complicated to go in, because first you don't get data. Data is always a problem because you don't have all data. It's complicated to interpret the data, but in my experience, in general, what I don't do is to pay attention of the warmer months. I mean, I know that in Burgundy you can go to 40 degrees Celsius, so really it's very hot. You say, somebody would tell me, but Burgundy 40, yes. In August you can be at 40. But the difference from Burgundy, from other places, or Medoc with other places, or Mendoza with other places, will be what will happen in the other months of the growing season. It's like the Gauss curve. In the center, for me, is less important, is the beginning and the ending. And this will mark atypicity. And many red wines have similar climate in terms of the beginning and the end. The soil temperature is also very important, because if the soil is quite cold, roots will start working later. That means that the vine development will be longer. And if it is longer, you will go always with black fruit, with less acidity and balanced pH, and you will need to correct a lot, and intervention, and what is terroir intervention, and well, it's a problem. So, and in the other case, when the soil is warm, like a stony soil, roots will start growing in the season earlier. So you will be able to pick early, so better numbers, better acidity, better pH, the wine will you will have a longer wine, and etc. So everybody talk about the temperature of the aerial part. The soil temperature maybe is more important than what the sun is giving directly to the leaves. Nobody pay attention to that. When you irrigate, it's a problem, because when you irrigate, you're giving a cold side to the soil. If you're not irrigating, you're giving a warm side of the sun. But one thing is to be warm, and the other thing is to be burned. You don't want to burn the roots. You want just to find the moment. In terms of morphology, this is a classical morphology view of many places in the world. Tuscany, Piedmont, whatever, Cauquenes in Chile. And always people have split between those three situations. 1, 2, 3, this is classical village wine, this is Grand Cru, and this First Cru in Burgundy. You will find some First Cru here, but the name is the same, because they haven't invented one first and a half cru. But in fact, the typicity is so different. And again, it's because of the relationship between the soil, the mother rock, and the hard mother rock. And the stages will be completely different, because here you will get a lot of water in the water holding capacity. That will affect the alteration of the rock and the alteration of the rock here. And in the other case, up, all the water goes down to here, so the rock will be harder. So with more fracture, more easy to fracture, but harder. So the roots will be completely different. The vigor will be completely different. So if I were a buying guy, I will always ask me what I expect, for example, for a Burgundy, then where to buy it, and then who, the interpretation of the place. And it's a big problem, because you can pay a lot of money for a wine that you know that it's a red label, but what about the typicity? So, for instance, there are many First Cru in the upper part in Bon Romanée that should be Grand Cru. They are not, they will never be, but you will pay less than the Grand Cru, and you will get incredible quality. But you need to know, again, about the form. The next time that you go to Burgundy and you are able to walk and look, please look at the form, and look at the form of La Tâche, look at the form of Le Cros Parentou, look at the forms of the place. That's open to the imagination. One time I was in Chile with a very famous winemaker, old winemaker, and we worked in a place, and with a slope, a very famous place in Chile, and I asked him, what do you see? He said to me, what do you mean? And I asked again, very simple, what do you see? So he looked at me and said, I don't understand the question. Guy, it's very easy. What do you see? So he thought that was a tricky question. So he was very uncomfortable, said, I don't know, I see vines. Perfect. Okay, he was able to see vines. Then what else? And the guy wasn't able to talk about colors and forms. My question is, how can you make wines if your imagination and your looking is so that you don't see colors and forms? Wine, terroir is about colors, it's about forms. So you need to really have an open mind to observe the place. This is a cut of Bon Romanet, following the upper part, and you will see that even if you are in the middle or high, there's some soils that can be the same higher or in the middle because of the form. But what will change is the amount of water getting by the rain in the upper part than the water getting by the rain here. So the relationship between water and fractures is super important because it's the effet millésime. Good year, bad year. So that's why morphology is so important. If we go to lithology or geology, it's the same. It's also very important because if you look all around the world, you will see that in every place, there are always the same kind of rocks that provides the good wines. That won't change. The first one, the most famous, and I won't say it's the best for me, but it's the most famous, is the limestone, sodium metal rock, and it's this the Clos de Tarbes. And it's very famous because wines like Clos de Tarbes make it very famous. But it would be easy to name many places with limestone making very bad wines. So it's not because we find limestone that the wine is good. Then we need to go what kind of limestone. The limestone is hard, it's broken. The alteration of the limestone is going to clay, to silt. How's the relationship between your climate and your limestone? And blah, 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 blah. Then there is another problem. I think it's like a genetic problem. There are some vines that don't like to grow in the limestone. It's like that. For example, Cabernet Sauvignon. Cabernet Sauvignon in general wants to grow only in one kind of terroir. Every time that it's planted in another terroir, it's complicated. You need to work a lot, and you feel it immediately when you taste. A wine that comes from a soil that is not alluvial, for Cabernet Sauvignon, will have a typicity, an unbalanced typicity that is always, depending on climate, going between bitterness and metallic. And it's very easy to recognize. This is not the proper soil for a Cabernet Sauvignon. Other vines, cepage, are quite the same. And it is, we can't change that. It's like history. It is like, you like it or you don't like it. Then it's about winemaking intervention. What we can do with that. Then we start with unique oxygenation, tannins, and da. We don't know, we don't want to know. It's the reality. And at the end, you end with a bottle, a blend, to try to get some complexity of the product. But the reality is that this Cabernet Sauvignon will never be a good Cabernet Sauvignon. It is like that. Then, a metamorphic rock, schist. This is a photo that François took when he was in Sogape, in Portugal, with Sotomayor. This is the best Turiga Nacional made by Sogape. This is the soil. So schist is another kind of rock that breaks in a very similar way than limestone. That means broken on layers, more parallel. So when the rocks breaks like that, the roots will go like an escalator down. So it's one kind of roots growing. The difference that in the limestone, what will be the alteration between the rocks, so the soil in between, is different than the soil from a schist. A schist, quite famous, Priorat, Ampuy, Douro, are great wines. And we are going to taste one wine that is coming, it's a mix, it's a blend, but for me the best components in the blend comes from this kind of soil, is the Luis Felipe Edwards, the blend. This is a great terroir for me, but it's more difficult than limestone. because always in between what you will find is clay. And because of the form, if you get a little more rain, you will have oversized vines, so it's always complicated. And it's difficult to see because the rock is hard, so when we get some pits to see the roots, the machine can go down. So it's quite difficult to work over schist to understand the terroir. But schist is, and there are not so many in the world, so it's great. And another problem, to have schist, you will have always a very important tectonic place, because to be schist, you will have to burn with very high temperature the rock. That's called metamorphic. And because of that, always the schist are in very steep slopes. That means more expensive. Then another rock, mainly Chile, is intrusive, is the granite. And the problem is that, for instance, in Chile there are at least 22 kinds of different granites. But granites are also spectacular terroirs, more easy to work. Again, the problem is the fine-tuning, because you can go very easy to dry and very hard tunnels. So if the year is dry, the wine will be very, very dry and hard, you know. If the year is too much raining, it's less problem because of the size of the quartz, the porosity is very good, and the waters go out fast. Boom! And you can handle that. If the year is great, the wine is great. Again, some cepage goes very well in granite, other works horrible over granites. Then volcanics, extrusive rocks. And volcanics is more complicated. It's more complicated because the volcanics, the alteration goes always to clay, and so you get a lot of stones in the soil, but if you don't work really well the soils, the clay will be very hard and you go easily to dry tunnels and bitter tunnels. Volcanic is Napa Valley, volcanic is Sonoma, volcanic is the Andes mountain range in Chile, volcanic will be some places in Mendoza. Volcanic is a very open world because there are different kinds of volcanics. Again, basalt in Italy in the Etna, or in Armenia basalt, or in the south of Chile basalt, which is great, or andesite, or different kind of rocks. So again, volcanic is very large world. What kind of volcanic rock? It's very important. Those four will be the most important geological soils all around the world. I will say 99.99% of the great wines of the world that comes from geology are here. There's one name that I didn't put it, it's also most metamorphic, is the Neis, also in the Rhone, but it's less important. So the first point is, what do you have in your vineyard? That is the first question. What's the morphology? What's the geology? How this geology is brought? And with that, you will have 80% the idea of what you're going to produce and if you are going to be successful or not. Is that fast like that. Then we go to the new soils, and the new soils are less sexy, I would say, because they tend to produce wines that should be blended. Because the soil is more new, it's more simple. So they provide great components, but it's complicated to get a single vineyard component. Is the alluvial gravelly soils. That's why Medoc blends. In Medoc, you can make a 100% Cabernet Sauvignon if you want. Nobody does that because the 100% Cabernet Sauvignon is great, but a little simple. So you go to blending. And in this kind of alluvial soils, like that, classical gravel, again we will find many different situations, and the situation will be clearly focused to the soil in between the rocks. For example, why there is no Cabernet Sauvignon in Pomerol, knowing that Pomerol is alluvial? And why if you go in front, you will have in the Medoc many great plateaux with Cabernet Sauvignon. Climate is quite the same, we're in front. So this is an important question. And the answer is because the gravels coming from Pomerol come from the center of France. It's called the Massif Central. And the Massif Central has one kind of geology, and the gravels coming from Medoc comes from the Pyrenees with another kind of geology. That means that if we dig in Pomerol, we have the gravels with clay, if we dig in the block, we have the gravels with sand. And that changes completely the speed of the drainage of the work of the soil. And Cabernet Sauvignon need very fast drainage. And Merlot need very good water provided by the clay. That's the question. So there are many kind of different gravels, and I will talk a little because some wines come from this system, especially in Mendoza. At the end, the colluvial, again, colluvials when you get an earthquake and soils go down in a short movement. Huge porosity, full of rocks. Colluvial soils tend to have too much water holding capacity. If you are in the New World and you can control the water with irrigation, colluvial produce very good wines. If you are in Europe and you are without irrigation but rain, colluvial makes very bad wines. So colluvial is mostly a manned soil. We need to really work the soil. Again, a problem. This is show 6 different soils, 100% limestones. 5 of them produce very famous and expensive wines. 1 of them produce €1 wine. So the question is, which one? And normally, again, in terroir, in general, people think that the most attractive photo here produces the best wine. And no, actually the opposite. Castilla-La Mancha in Spain. And it's very spectacular, very wide, you know, the clay with a lot of iron, very red, roots are perfect going down, and the wine is Tempranillo that is terrible, super unbalanced. That means that when you find the geology, there is another step. And then again, the zoning problem. Where is the good, where is the not so good, and hence, how can I interpret this kind of different situations? I will go faster. Clay, huge topic, because always people ask me, Pedro, and my clay is good or bad? It's first very open, and usually people think in good or bad because of the importance of the work of Claude Bourguignon, saying that the clay in Burgundy and the clay in Petrus and Pomerol are very expensive clay, the best clay in the world, so he put the word best for a clay. And journalists take it. This clay is better, oh, better. Blue clay, boom, boom. So if the other clays are not so good, we can say that Jean Michel in Hermitage is a bad wine, because he had the opposite clay. And that's why it's complicated. And the clay will be always related with how the rock is broken. If you have a very hard rock with few fractures, you should have good fertility, and you should have a good clay, like Burgundy. If your rock is very well fractured, very easy to fracture, so it's a more fertile rock, better don't have a good clay. Because if you have a good clay and a fertile rock, the vigor will be terrible. So, over a granite, always try to have a low quality clay, because the granite itself is very good. So, there is no better clay. There are different clay. So, again, a big problem. In Petrus, I took it, they were the last year making the new winery, so all the clay was just in front. Then this is Ucu Valley, is Altamira, we're going to talk about Altamira, and this is La Romanée in Bon Romanée. Clay, clay, clay. Different wines, different typicities, always surrounded by clay. And this is a classic photo with a clear cut showing that the upper part, what is red, is the clay with a lot of iron. Then the first stage of the alteration of the limestone, then the second stage of the alteration of the limestone. And the problem is that some vines have 20 centimeters of soil, and other vines have 1 meter or more of soil. That would make 2 different ripeness. That means that if you're not in a good climate, this part can be burned by the sun because too low fertility, and the other part will be great. And if they are going to the same tank, we have a great base with overripe and high alcohol coming from this part of the bank. This is the zoning problem. This is the zoning problem. Again, Bon Romanet, different growers in Bon Romanet, all limestone. What do you have? That's why it's so important to know what I like and where to buy it. And explain other things. For example, one pit that, and the wine is richer because the alteration is more than the hard rock. If you go to, this is not here, but for example, in the upper part, if we got a Musigny dome, we'll say the Musigny is always on plaquette, but very high. So soil will be shallow, and then the stones in plaquette like that, quite hard, another typicity. So this is all rocky, very alterated. We are in the Le Clos Chateau, the Bouilly complex is in the lower part. So it will change completely. It's a spatial problem. In Burgundy, the spatial problem is already resolved because of the history. In Argentina and Chile, it's not resolved. All this will go to the same tank. So it will be a blend. When winemaker and viticultures are smart, the blend can be very good. If they are not smart, the blend is a disaster because it will provide an unbalanced wine. That's why scale is a huge topic. Some wineries will work at this scale. The vineyard will be just one color. If we look better, we see that we have maybe two colors. If we look better, we see that it's more complex, and we want to work like that. It's not one color. That is a scale problem. And always for quality is a scale problem. This is a machine that looks at the soil with a lot of putting electricity in the soil. It's called electroconductivity. It's not important, we're going to talk later, but that shows you that a little vineyard, that is one, has many, many, many different something. And these different somethings have different problems in terms of management and winemaking. In this case, I would say that the red part would be very easy to go to bitter tannins and to problems because the clay will get very dry, you will get very little grapes and low vigor. The sun will burn the grapes, so you will have a very high alcohol, and the wines will be short on the mouth, unbalanced, catastrophe. The blue part, most stony, will have the best part, but when you look at the leaves, you don't know that. So you blend it, poop, 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 and you end it with an unbalanced wine again. My interpretation is super important. For example, this is just one word, one selection. I will go to plant my Cabernet Sauvignon with 10114. Why? Because it's what the nursery has. Okay, but the soil is very stony. I don't care. Then the vines will have very low vigor, sunburns, blah, 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 blah. If the soil is deep and you select Paulsen, will be the same. This is the same soil, two different rootstock. If you go to Tuscany, this for the grape. Because if you plant with that, they won't grow. You will get other problem. They know that now. In the early years, no. In Mendoza, there are many, many places planted with SO4. Always for all my clients, SO4 is the worst wine. I even don't go to work because I know that it will be the worst wine. Not because SO4 is a bad root soil, which it is, but because it's not appropriate for the kind of soil in Mendoza. So it's my interpretation. And again, my interpretation. This is the terroir map of Costournel that was made by Pierre Bachelet. So Dominique Arangois, who is the winemaker, now with the map can decide better how to manipulate the blend. This is a man interpretation. Without the map, you don't really know. Now he knows that pa, you know? So decisions. If we bring a new winemaker for Costounel, maybe he would like the plateau gravels, and he will go more for the slope gravels, for the bone of the wine. And the wine could change completely. It's the same terroir, but the interpretation of the place will be different, the wine will be different.